$5 million, vanished from the city's most ruthless crime syndicate, and the only person with access was a plus-size accountant who never spoke out of turn. When Gabriel fired her, he thought he was tying up loose ends. He didn't realize she was the only thing keeping him out of federal prison. Gabriel Costello did not tolerate mistakes. From the penthouse office of Costello Logistics on Wacker Drive in downtown Chicago, he ran a multi-million-dollar empire. On paper, it was shipping and real estate. In reality, it was the blood and muscle of the Chicago syndicate. Gabriel was a man carved from ice and paranoia, trusting no one and verifying everything. But for the last 3 years, he had implicitly trusted Chloe Jenkins. Chloe didn't look like she belonged in the sleek, dangerous world of the Costello family. In an office filled with sharp-suited maid men and stiletto-wearing assistants, Chloe was a stark contrast. She was a deeply fat woman, a fact she never apologized for, but often hid behind oversized, muted cardigans and thick-rimmed glasses. She didn't command attention when she walked into a room. She blended into the wallpaper. But behind her dual monitors, she was a savant. She could launder cartel cash through 3 shell companies and a legitimate bakery before Gabriel had even finished his morning espresso. She was quiet, fiercely loyal, and entirely invisible. Until the morning, the numbers stopped making sense. It was a Tuesday when Gabriel's underboss, Vincent Vinny Pagano, slammed a leather-bound folder onto Gabriel's mahogany desk. "We have a leak, boss," Vinny sneered, his eyes glittering with a toxic mix of triumph and malice. "A big one. $4.2 million is gone from the Cayman accounts. Apex Holdings, poof, vanished." Gabriel felt a cold spike in his chest. Apex Holdings was their primary artery for offshore laundering. "Who?" Vinny tapped a manicured fingernail against the ledger. "I had our IT guys bypass the usual security protocols. The transfer was authorized at 2:00 a.m. last night. The authorization code belonged to your favorite number cruncher, Chloe." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Bring her in here." Minutes later, Chloe stood in the center of the sprawling office. She was clutching a manila folder to her chest, her knuckles white. She looked small despite her size, her shoulders hunched as she faced the 2 most dangerous men in the city. "Mr. Costello?" she asked, her voice a soft tremor. Gabriel didn't yell. He rarely did. His quiet anger was far more terrifying. $4 million. $200,000, Chloe. That's what's missing from Apex Holdings as of this morning. Care to explain? Chloe's eyes darted to Vinny, who was leaning against the floor-to-ceiling windows with a smug, predatory grin. She swallowed hard, her round cheeks flushing a deep crimson. "The money. It had to be moved, Gabriel. There was an irregularity." "An irregularity?" Vinny barked, stepping forward. "You transferred it to a dummy account in Zurich, an account we don't own. You stole from the family, you stupid cow." Gabriel held up a hand, silencing Vinny. He stepped around his desk, towering over Chloe. He looked at her. Really looked at her. Her clothes were off the rack. Her shoes were sensible flats. She took the Blue Line train to work every day. She didn't live the life of a thief. Yet the digital footprint was undeniable. "Did you authorize the transfer, Chloe? Yes or no?" Gabriel's voice was dangerously even. Chloe looked up at him. For a fleeting second, the terror in her eyes was replaced by something else. Something heart-breakingly resolute. "Yes," she whispered. "I moved the money." "Where is it?" I can't tell you that. It's gone into a blind trust. For your protection. Vinny laughed, a harsh, scraping sound. For his protection? She's playing you, boss. She's got it stashed and she's planning to run. Give me 10 minutes with her downstairs. She'll give up the routing numbers. Chloe flinched, shrinking back. But her eyes never left Gabriel's. She was waiting for him to defend her, to show even a sliver of the trust she had given him for years. Gabriel stared at her. In his world, theft was met with a bullet. But looking at her trembling hands, he couldn't pull the trigger. He felt a sickening sense of betrayal. He thought she was different. He thought she was safe. "You have 5 minutes to clear out your desk," Gabriel said, his voice dropping to a freezing register. Chloe gasped, the sound punching through the heavy silence of the room. "Gabriel, please, you have to listen to me. The audit—" "I said clear out your desk," Gabriel roared, finally losing his iron grip on his temper. "If you are still in this building in 6 minutes, Vinny gets his wish. And if I ever see your face in Chicago again, I won't hesitate. You're fired. Get out!" Tears spilled over Chloe's thick lashes, tracking down her cheeks. She didn't beg. She didn't scream. She simply nodded, a heavy, devastating acceptance settling over her. She turned heavily and walked to the door. Just before she stepped out, she paused. She didn't look back, but her voice carried softly across the room. "Check the physical ledger for the 14th, Gabriel. Don't trust the red ink." And then she was gone. 2 weeks passed, and the empire began to bleed. Firing Chloe Jenkins was supposed to be the end of it. Gabriel had written off the $4.2 million as a painful lesson in misplaced trust. But without Chloe, the books were a disaster. The men Vinny brought in to replace her were arrogant and sloppy. Shipments were delayed, accounts were frozen, and worst of all, the feds were suddenly everywhere. Detective Robert Miller of the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force had become a permanent thorn in Gabriel's side. In the span of 14 days, the FBI had raided 2 of Costello Logistics' waterfront warehouses and seized 3 shipping containers full of untaxed imports. It was precise. It was targeted. Someone was feeding them a map of the Costello family's operations. Gabriel sat in his darkened penthouse office, a glass of scotch untouched on his desk. Vinny was pacing the floor, waving his hands frantically. "I'm telling you, boss, it was the fat girl," Vinny spat, his face slick with sweat. "Chloe. She stole the money to buy a new identity, and now she's singing to Miller to keep herself out of prison. We need to track her down and silence her before she hands them the keys to the kingdom." Gabriel stared out at the glittering Chicago skyline, feeling a gnawing rot in his gut. Something was wrong. The FBI raids were hitting their physical assets, but their digital footprint, the bank accounts, the shell companies, remained untouched. If Chloe was talking, why wouldn't she give them the Apex Holdings accounts? That was where the real evidence was. "Leave me," Gabriel said quietly. "But boss," I said, "get out, Vinny." When the heavy oak door clicked shut, Gabriel stood up. He walked out of his office, took the private elevator down to the basement levels of the building, past the reinforced steel doors and the armed guards lay the archives. This was where Chloe had spent most of her time, surrounded by mountains of paper. Despite her genius with computers, she had always insisted on keeping encrypted, handwritten physical ledgers as a fail-safe. The basement smelled of dust and old coffee. Gabriel walked to her abandoned desk. It felt hollow. He opened the bottom drawer. Check the physical ledger for the 14th, Gabriel. Don't trust the red ink. Her parting words had haunted his sleep for 2 weeks. He pulled out a heavy, leather-bound book marked with the current year. He flipped through the pages until he reached the 14th of the previous month. The page was covered in Chloe's immaculate, tiny handwriting. Most of the numbers were in standard black ink. But at the bottom margin, there was a string of transactions written in glaring red. Normally, red ink in accounting meant a loss, a deficit. But as Gabriel stared at the numbers, his brow furrowed. These weren't dollar amounts. They were dates, followed by strange, sequential digits. He moved to her computer terminal and booted it up, overriding the locks with his master password. He pulled up the company's internal server logs, matching the dates in red ink to the network activity. His blood ran cold. On every single date written in red, there was an unauthorized external login to the Costello internal servers. Someone had been downloading their routing numbers, their shell company structures, and the exact manifests of their incoming shipments. Gabriel cross-referenced the IP address of the external login. It bounced around, masked by VPNs. But the initial handshake pinged back to a burner phone. A burner phone whose serial number Gabriel recognized, because he was the one who had bought a crate of them for his inner circle. He typed furiously, pulling up the GPS data from the phone's service provider. The phone had pinged cell towers outside the FBI field office on Roosevelt Road every single Tuesday for the last 3 months. It wasn't Chloe. It was Vinny. Vinny Pagano, his underboss, the man who had demanded Chloe's head, was a federal informant. Gabriel slumped back in the chair, the air rushing out of his lungs. He stared blindly at the screen as the horrifying truth began to piece itself together. He looked back at the ledger. Below the red ink, on the very last line, Chloe had written a single tiny note in pencil. Subpoena request caught in firewall. Apex 88B compromised. Burn protocol engaged. Suddenly, it all made sense. A devastating, crushing wave of realization washed over Gabriel. Chloe hadn't stolen the $4.2 million. As an accountant, she had a back door into the banking software that alerted her when legal entities requested records. Vinny had given the FBI the exact routing numbers for Apex Holdings. The FBI was hours away from dropping a freeze on the account and seizing the money. If they had seized that cash, they would have had the financial link they needed to tie Gabriel directly to the cartel laundering. It would have been a guaranteed RICO conviction. Life in a concrete box. Chloe saw it coming. She knew Vinny was the rat, but she had no proof Gabriel would believe over his own underboss. So she did the only thing she could. In the dead of night, she dumped the $4.2 million into an untraceable, blind trust black hole. She burned the money to destroy the evidence. She took the blame. She let Vinny call her a thief. She let Gabriel look at her with disgust and fire her. Because she knew, if she explained it then, Vinny would realize he was made and might have killed them both or triggered the FBI raid immediately. Chloe, the quiet, heavy-set woman who everyone ignored, had single-handedly outsmarted the FBI and the Chicago syndicate's underboss. She had torched her own career, her reputation and her safety just to keep Gabriel out of a cage, and Gabriel had thrown her to the wolves. "God," Gabriel whispered, the sound tearing from his throat in the empty basement. He buried his face in his hands, shame burning hot in his chest. She was out there, alone, unprotected. And Vinny was currently upstairs, trying to convince Gabriel to hunt her down and kill her. Vinny knew she was smart. He knew it was only a matter of time before she found a way to expose him. Vinny wasn't trying to protect the family from a thief. He was trying to tie up a loose end. Gabriel stood up, his chair scraping violently against the concrete floor. The cold, calculating mob boss was gone, replaced by a man consumed by a terrifying, desperate rage. He had to find her, before Vinny did, before the FBI did. He had to find the woman who had sacrificed everything for him, and he had to make the men who put her in danger bleed. Gabriel did not go back upstairs. Instead, he took the freight elevator to the underground parking garage, his mind working with the cold, lethal precision that had made him the head of the Costello syndicate. He needed to find Chloe before Vinny realized his cover was blown. He pulled out his encrypted phone and dialed a number that wasn't saved in his contacts. It rang twice before a gravelly voice answered. "Arthur, I need a trace," Gabriel said, stepping into his bulletproof SUV. "Total blackout. No one in the family knows about this but me. If you breathe a word of this to anyone, I'll feed you to the lake." Arthur, a disgraced former NSA analyst who operated out of a reinforced basement in Detroit, didn't flinch at the threat. "Give me the parameters, Gabriel. Chloe Jenkins. She was my lead accountant. I need her digital footprint from the moment she left my building 2 weeks ago. She's smart, Arthur. She won't be using her own credit cards, and her phone is already in the river." "If she's as smart as you say." "She's a ghost," Arthur muttered, the clacking of a keyboard echoing over the line. "Everyone leaves a shadow," Gabriel replied, gripping the steering wheel. "Look for medical record." "She takes a specific thyroid medication. Look for cash purchases of burner laptops. Look for anything out of the ordinary on the regional transit grids. Find my ghost." Gabriel hung up and drove. He didn't know where he was going yet, but he needed to be moving. For 12 agonizing hours, silence stretched. Gabriel sat in a dimly lit diner on the outskirts of the city, drinking black coffee that tasted like ash, playing out every horrific scenario in his head. If Vinny's men found her first, they wouldn't make it quick. They would torture her for the routing numbers to the missing millions, and when they realized the money was gone for good, they would discard her like trash. The thought of someone laying a hand on Chloe sent a wave of visceral, blinding rage through Gabriel's veins. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It was something deeper. As he sat there, he realized how much he had relied on her quiet strength. He remembered the soft curve of her cheek when she smiled at a balanced spreadsheet, the way she bit her lip when she was thinking, the warmth she brought to a world entirely devoid of it. She was a soft, beautiful light in his dark, violent life, and he had snuffed her out. His phone vibrated. "Got a hit," Arthur said. "She's good, Gabriel. She paid cash for Greyhound tickets going south, but she never got on the bus. She hitched a ride on a commercial freight truck heading north, but she made one mistake. She had to refill her prescription. A pharmacy in Racine, Wisconsin, just ran a script under a fake name, but the doctor's DEA number matches her old physician in Chicago." "Where is she?" Gabriel demanded, starting the engine. "A place called the Pine Ridge Motor Inn. Room 114. "But Gabriel, you're not the only one looking. I'm monitoring local police scanners. Someone just called in a noise complaint and a suspicious vehicle at that exact address." The plates on the vehicle are registered to a shell company, one of yours. Vinny. I'm an hour out, Gabriel snarled, slamming his foot on the gas. If they touch her before I get there, I'll burn this whole city down. The storm hit as Gabriel crossed the state line, rain lashing against the windshield in violent sheets. Thunder shook the highway, masking the roar of the SUV's engine. When he finally pulled into the gravel lot of the Pine Ridge Motor Inn, the neon vacancy sign was flickering, casting a sickly red glow over the puddles. There, parked outside the row of battered doors, was a black sedan. Two men in dark raincoats were standing outside room 114. Gabriel recognized them instantly. Dominic and Sal, Vinny's most brutal enforcers. Dominic was holding a crowbar, wedging it into the doorframe, while Sal stood back with a suppressed pistol drawn. Gabriel didn't shout a warning. In his world, hesitation was death. He drew his Sig Sauer, stepped out into the pouring rain, and fired. The first bullet took Sal in the shoulder, spinning him around before Gabriel's second shot dropped him into the mud. Dominic whirled around, raising the crowbar, his eyes going wide as he recognized his boss. "Mr. Costello!" Dominic yelled over the thunder. "Vinny said—" Gabriel didn't care what Vinny said. He fired twice into Dominic's chest. The enforcer collapsed against the door, his weight forcing the cheap wood to splinter and give way. Gabriel stepped over the bodies, his gun raised, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The room was pitch black. "Chloe," Gabriel called out, his voice rough. Silence. Then a small, trembling sound from the corner. Gabriel reached for the light switch, flicking it on. Chloe was backed into the farthest corner of the dingy room. She was wearing an oversized grey sweatshirt, her hair damp and tangled. In her trembling hands, she held a heavy glass lamp, raised as if she were prepared to strike down a mob hitman with it. Her eyes were wide with sheer, unadulterated terror. She looked at the bodies in the doorway, and then up at Gabriel. "Gabriel," she choked out, her knees buckling. The lamp slipped from her fingers, shattering on the cheap carpet. Gabriel holstered his weapon and crossed the room in 2 long strides. He fell to his knees in front of her, reaching out but stopping an inch from her arms, afraid that his touch would break her. "I've got you," he breathed, his voice breaking. "I've got you, Chloe. You're safe." She looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. "Why are you here?" "The money. I didn't steal it, Gabriel. I swear I was trying to—" "I know," Gabriel interrupted, his hands finally closing over her trembling shoulders. "I know about Vinny. I know about the FBI. I know what you did for me." Chloe let out a fractured sob, the weight of the last 2 weeks finally crashing down on her. "He was going to give them Apex Holdings. They would have had you, Gabriel. I couldn't let them take you." "Why?" Gabriel asked, his voice a ragged whisper. He looked up at her, searching her beautiful, tear-stained face. "I treated you like a machine. I fired you. I threw you out to die. Why would you sacrifice your life for mine?" Chloe looked down, her thick lashes casting shadows on her flushed cheeks. "Because you were the only person in that building who ever looked at me like I was a human being. And because I couldn't bear the thought of a world where you weren't free." Gabriel's chest tightened painfully. He leaned forward and pulled her into his arms, crushing her against his chest. She was soft and warm, and she fit perfectly against him. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling the faint scent of vanilla and rain. "I am so sorry, Chloe," he murmured against her skin. "I will spend the rest of my life making this right. I swear to God." Gabriel drove them to Mackinac County, Michigan. The safe house was a formidable fortress operating off the grid, veiled as a hunting cabin. Surrounded by pines and the freezing waters of Lake Huron, it was the only place Gabriel felt secure. For 3 days, Chloe barely left the bedroom, physically decimated from outsmarting a federal dragnet. Gabriel spent those agonizing hours pacing the hardwood floors, brewing black coffee, and meticulously plotting the demise of Vinnie Pagano. When Chloe finally emerged, she walked into the kitchen wearing Gabriel's oversized flannel shirt. On her lush, deeply curved frame, the thick fabric draped beautifully over her wide hips. Gabriel stopped wiping down his disassembled Sig Sauer, his dark eyes softening. To him, the brilliant, fat accountant was the most breathtaking woman he had ever seen. "How are you holding up?" Gabriel asked, sliding a mug of coffee across the granite island. "Like I survived a pile-up," Chloe admitted, wrapping her soft hands around the warm ceramic. "But we have a massive problem. When Vinnie realizes his men are dead outside my Racine motel, he'll panic. He will run straight to FBI Detective Robert Miller, hand over the syndicate's maps, and demand witness protection." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "I have men stationed outside his condo at the Waldorf Astoria right now. But a direct hit is too risky. If he turns up dead, Miller will use it to tear my family apart. We need to discredit him." A profoundly wicked smile spread across Chloe's face, a fiercely confident expression Gabriel had never seen. "Then it is a good thing you brought your accountant with you," she stated quietly. "What are you thinking?" Gabriel asked. "The $4.2 million, Chloe explained, opening Gabriel's laptop. "It's not gone. I placed it in a heavily encrypted blind trust, but intentionally set a sensitive digital tripwire. Vinnie is greedy. He wanted that $4 million for his retirement. I calculated he wouldn't stop digging through the Costello servers to find it. So I left a dummy directory labeled Apex Override." "What happens when he clicks it?" Gabriel asked, stepping intimately close, smelling the vanilla on her skin. "It activates a dormant Trojan worm," Chloe said, striking the enter key. "It covertly mirrors and downloads his entire personal hard drive. Every offshore account he's secretly hidden. Every illicit side deal he's made with the Albanian factions. And it auto-forwards all that damning evidence directly to Detective Miller's secure FBI inbox." Gabriel chuckled darkly. "You framed the federal informant." "I simply exposed the crimes he was already committing," Chloe countered. "If Miller receives irrefutable proof, his star informant is running an illegal syndicate right under his nose, Vinnie's immunity deal is voided. The FBI will arrest him for federal fraud. He'll go to the Metropolitan Correctional Center, exposed as a rat. And inside a federal penitentiary, my men will take care of the rest. Execute it." The fallout was catastrophic. Less than 48 hours later, the FBI violently raided Vinnie's luxury condominium. Agent Miller revoked all federal protection. Vinnie was dragged onto the Chicago streets in handcuffs. Chloe's digital paper trail was bulletproof. Vinnie was thrown into lockup and did not survive his first week. A shank in the recreation yard ensured his eternal silence. The suffocating federal pressure on the Costello family vanished. Standing on the wooden deck of the safe house, Gabriel watched the sun dip below the tree line. Chloe stepped out into the biting chill, wrapping her arms around her thick waist. "It's over," Gabriel said. "Vinnie is dead. You did it, Chloe. We did it, she corrected. So, do I get my severance check now? Gabriel took her soft hands in his scarred ones. No, you are never going back to a desk in a basement. He stepped closer, his chest brushing against her soft curves. I spent my life searching for loyalty in men with guns, and completely overlooked the bravest, most brilliant woman right in front of me. You saved my empire, but you also brought me back to life. He gently cupped her round cheek. I don't want you as my accountant, Chloe. I want you by my side, as my partner, as my queen. Chloe's breath hitched. For years, she had hidden her large body and her brilliance in the shadows. But in Gabriel's dark eyes, she saw nothing but absolute worship. He leaned down and kissed her, a desperate, consuming fire. Chloe melted against his hard frame, her hands pulling him closer. When they broke apart, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. We return to Chicago tomorrow, he murmured fiercely. And when we walk into that boardroom, every single man in this family will know exactly who holds the power. If you loved this story about loyalty, betrayal, and a brilliant woman who outsmarted the mob, don't keep it to yourself. Smash that like button. Share this video with your friends who love a spicy, suspenseful mafia romance. And make sure to subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories every single week. Drop a comment below. Would you have risked it all like Chloe did? Let us know, and stay tuned for the next upload.